This is the Sudrian Union, known for its rail system and political strength and governments, especially the recent war against the Kingdom of Almilia. However, many people have heard of the railroad that runs in the Sudrian Union. It's known as Sudric Rail. Sudric Rail started out after the Soviet Union collapsed in 1953 after the death of Joseph Stalin and his inner circle. Sudric Rail was founded by the Sudrian Union's leader, its very first, Saint Gratitude III, after taking over the Soviet Union and collapsing the government. Sudric Rail is known for using a vast network of locomotives, being diesel, electric, and even older Soviet steam locomotives used it for the Cold War. Most of these steam engines will return to regular service on the Sudrian Union with the help of diesel and electric locomotives mostly doing the goods and passenger services. The Sudrian Union takes pride of its locomotives, and even the Sudrian Star, a very famous and fast express service known across Europe and Asia alike, even competing in the 2009 race between the Notin Filipino Railway C6248. The Sudrian Star is also known for being one of the fastest railway express line connecting all the way to Paris. However, this train also is known for going very fast, and when you see it, it disappears almost immediately as seen. This has caused several accidents with enough force to even destroy the main line. Thankfully, rail collisions in the Sudrian Union are very rare thanks to the Sudric Act, which was enacted in 1982, which maintained positive train control all over the Sudrian Union and its main lines. However, the Sudrian Union is also known for its vast military presence on the rails. Railways in the Sudrian Union are operated independently. However, the military loves contracting the railroads for transporting tanks, military vehicles, and even oil. Oil transportation in the Sudrian Union starts as mostly in the Middle East. All the way back in the 1980s, Iraq, Iran, and the Kingdom of Almilia made inquiries sent to the United Nations explaining that the Sudrian Union has been abusing the oil contracts with them. However, the Sudrian government had declined this. This sparked the 2000 Iraq invasion in the 2000s, seizing oil fields in Iraq. This saw a significant large amount of oil trains coming from Iraq being sent to the oil refineries in the west, to Amoco. During the early 2000s, major collisions had occurred due to the mixture of schedules that were made by Sudric Rail. Due to these mixtures of schedules, rail collisions would often happen. One of these rail collisions killed several and millions of people. This rail collision was none other by the other ones, and is very well known by many Sudrian people, and still haunts several people to this day. It was known as the Ultravon Saint Gratitude collision. Let's travel back to the year 1972. In 1972, Sudric Rail absorbed BAM Pacific and created the goods liner of the Sudrian Union. Around this time, steam locomotives were seen everywhere across the Sudrian Union. Coal and steam burst through all over the main lines into the forest and into the western Sudrian Union. 4 geographical changes had occurred in the Sudrian Union, with the Sudrian Union majorly looking like the United States with forests, snowy valleys, and large hills across the Union in the west. The Sudrian Union economical boom in 1973 brought in several construction projects, making new cities and towns in the western Sudrian Union. Without the rush conditions of Siberia. Sudric Rail was contracted to deliver passengers and goods into these new constructed projects by the Sudrian government. It brought in several people into the West, finding jobs in the railroad and oil industry and many other jobs. Unfortunately, things became a major setback, as Sudric Rail was already busy on making the Sudrian Star's expansion to Beijing after Beijing was swiftly taken by the Sudrian Union during the Sino-China War against the Sudrian Union. Not to mention that the Sudrian Union is already pumping out new diesel and electric locomotives from the workshops in the Sudrian Union eastern areas. And these workshops were heavily out of date because the fact that the workshops were already aging, being built all the way back in 1910. The Sudric Rail signal system, which had been used since 1955, was also becoming out of date, as Sudric Rail had it mixed with different other signals. Sudric Rail also used digital signals, however they were weak as they were cheaply made and built. These caused several miscommunications between the drivers and the signalmen on signal boxes. Sudric Rail had failed to modernize throughout the 50s and 60s due to the fact that they were still running on government money, which was still running low as the government got less and less involved with the railroads, as they focused more on their relationships in the West. Sudric Rail didn't even have positive train control at the time, not even one, as they used American steam locomotives and diesel locomotives that were given by the American railroads during the beginning. And they still continued to pull trains in the highest speed capacity just to get the project over with so they can get back into more building new and better locomotives at the time. Sudric Rail's director at the time, Raznov Resvarov, eased Sudrian civilians' tensions with the high speeds, saying, "Our managers have confirmed that Sudric Rail will continue to be on time and reliable to the Sudrian civilians. As for our high-speed notability, please ease tensions as we have everything completely under control." Little that Raznov knew that he had spoke a little too soon. It is the early morning of May 5th, 1973. P-34/number 221 was making significant progress across Siberia as it crossed to the new green lands of the Sudrian Union. However, mechanical problems started to make the engine go slower and slower, and soon had to stop at the small village of Kurgan. However, Russian L-Class number 2561 was laying in its junction siding in the yards. An order came in from Sudric Rail's station master office saying that the L-Class had to take the Sudrian Star and continue it further into Abakan, which there 2 AMD S-40s would continue the train into Beijing and will be returned to the Moscow division of Saint Gratitude in the next morning. Meanwhile, No. 10 Filipino Railway Class 45, number 2271, had stopped it at a sidetrack nearby the village of Barnaul and carrying no passengers. 2271 has served with the No. 10 Filipino Railway since 1927 and was said to be retirement by 1981. The crew members of the train that night really didn't want their engine to be on the sidetrack as the Sudrian Star was expected to come through, fearing of a malfunction of the signals. The engine was indeed aging at the time and was estimated to be retirement by the next year. Around that same time, an unscheduled T-33 locomotive stopped due to a red signal. An altercation occurred with the signalman and the engineer of T-33 about the unscheduled arrival of the locomotive. All 4 of the engineers and the signalman soon saw a looming sight. A bright light had loomed from the sunrise. It was the Sudrian star, and it was barely down towards them. One of the engineers went up to 2271 and blew the emergency 3-chime whistle to warn the Sudrian star of another train ahead. The engineer heard the emergency whistle and applied the emergency brakes. The Sudrian star smashed into the fuel train exactly at 5:15 a.m. The impact was so strong enough that both engines ruptured in the inside, causing a massive explosion, along with the other fuel tankers that were behind T-77. The coaches were immediately engulfed in flames, burning everyone inside the coaches alive. None of them even got the chance to even make it out. In total, 6,000 people died in the coaches as they spread it to the other cars.
Attention all passengers. There has been a rail collision. Please remain calm and be seated.
The NTSB of Sudria and the No-10 Filipino Railway started an investigation of what have caused the incident. It was found out that T-77 had in fact was expected to be arrive. It was just not notified by the signal box and the signalman because of communication blocks. Other causes have been found in the incident, such as language barriers, misbalanced business practices, high-speed violations, the Sudrian star breaking down, and many more. The NTSB of Sudria found out that Sudric Rail had suffered increased low coal shortage in the last few months, and with the government expanding to making new towns and new villages, caused a bit of a stir, as they were still constructing new diesels and electric locomotives, which were only built for the East. And they were also horrified that yards across the Sudrian Union, especially in Saint Gratitude, were all full of cars and freight cars that have not yet been departed due to large schedule changes for the expansion project. This was because Sudric Rail was overwhelmed by the amounts of the project, not to mention of the malpractice business practices that were made by the previous Soviet rail system that was still plaguing Sudric Rail even into the 90s. The NTSB of Sudria also blamed the military for even blocking even more of Sudric Rail schedules, as many of their trains were scheduled to be departed with military supplies to forts and other major bunk-out positions across the Sudrian Union. As for the main lines themselves, they were modernized, yes, but they weren't modernized enough for the rail conditions to stop an engine immediately. This was known as the Baroque system, which was known for having clamps in the side of the wheels which would connect to the rails, making extra friction to stop a steam locomotive or any other type of locomotive. And at the end of it all, Sudric Rail was blamed for the crash, with the NTSB of Sudria finally putting its last notes into the accident, blaming Sudric Rail for the collision. The cause of the accident was the rails were failed to modernize, high-speed violations, and failed to modernize throughout the 50s and 60s, all leading up to the train crash. However, it wasn't entirely Sudric Rail's fault, mostly because of the large strain that the government was putting on them. In the end, 52 years later, many people still remember this incident, as it haunted many people, and many people have suffered as a result, suffering mental disabilities as a result, and many injuries. In the end, Sudric Rail had to pay approximately $5 million to all the victims of the rail collision. A memorial was held on May 5th, 2025, to memorialize the dead of the collision. Since the collision, however, Sudric Rail had finally modernized throughout the early 2000s into the 2010s, officially finishing its modernization in 2018.